Hey everybody, welcome to the fourth and final workshop of our mentor program. I am so sad that this is our final workshop, but I'm so excited for you all to jump into this final workshop. We've got a lot to cover this evening. We've got an amazing guest speaker for you this evening. I think you're going to really enjoy this. Now, this workshop is all about how to make the most out of that first internship. How do you make the most of that first internship or first job? Maybe you're jumping into a full-time job, you're a senior, you're graduating. Maybe you're hopefully jumping into an internship. Even if you're not jumping into an internship, maybe you're working on a part-time job that you want to make the most out of for the summer. That's okay too. This workshop is all about how can you make the most out of that first opportunity over the summer so that you can really set yourself apart. By the way, if you have a part-time job and you don't have an internship, there are plenty of ways that you can go about setting yourself apart in that part-time job that could lead to internships down the road. Seriously, do not settle and do not sell yourself short for the network that you could create from any particular opportunity. I know that I could tell you that back in the day when I was a server and bartender, I met plenty of people that ultimately opened up doors for opportunities that I ended up taking advantage of later. You never know who you will meet, even in the jobs you think are not your main thing. It's understandable, but leverage it. Don't ever write any potential connection off. So, as you all know, my name's Garrett. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. This workshop's going to be about 50 minutes long. Please ask any questions you have. If you have any questions in the comments section, as you all know, I'm gonna ask 3 questions during the duration of this workshop. Your job is to answer them within 24 hours of this workshop going live. I don't necessarily know exactly what the questions are going to be. I always prompt them based on our guest speaker. Sometimes I'll slip in an intro question during this segment here. It just depends how I'm feeling for the day. So I'm so excited for you all to jump in, learn from our guest this evening. I'm so excited to learn your answers to the questions that we ask you, and I'm so excited to engage with you all. Now, I really want to set the expectations. As you all know, you're not going to get an internship handed to you on a silver platter. That's just not how this program works. Now, by the way, have students landed opportunities at Google, major investment banks, major engineering firms, major marketing firms? Absolutely. Happens all the time. And have they done that as a result of meeting with their mentor, taking advantage of the things that they've learned through this program? Yeah, absolutely. But if you think this is going to get handed to you on a silver platter, I think you already know by now that's just not how this program works. You have to work for the things that you get. Now, this platform can be a springboard for you to get to where you want to be. Leverage this as an opportunity to really launch your early career path. Absolutely, yes. This is something that can really do make a huge impact on you getting to where you want to be. But this is not a handout. This is not something that is just given to you. This program could be critical to you really setting yourself apart compared to your peers. Take advantage of it. I really think that you're going to enjoy what we have to say in this workshop this evening. Now, I really want to talk about the intentionality of feelings, because here's the thing. At the end of the day, how you make someone feel in a given moment is going to really impact how they feel about you down the line. So I want you to just take a quick moment on a piece of paper or on your phone. I want you to identify, how do you want other people to feel about you? So when you're going into that first job, that first internship, that first part-time job, how do you want your boss? How do you want your colleagues? How do you want your peers? How do you want other people to feel about you? Write it in the comment section. Write it down on a piece of paper. I want to know, how do you want other people to feel about you? Because that intentionality is so key. It is so key, because here's the thing. If you don't write this down, if you don't set out an intention for how you want other people to feel about you, they are going to perceive you in any which way that you may feel on that given day. And that could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. If you're having an off day and you're thinking to yourself like, oh man, like, I'm having a rough day, you can let that spew onto other people. It happens all the time. And people come up with excuses for it. You might say, hey, my dog died earlier today, or I just found out my grandma's got cancer, having a rough day. And don't get me wrong, there's not an excuse for having a rough day, but you've got to be able to realize that as a professional, you've got to put on multiple different hats to get yourself in the zone to make the most out of it. So no matter what's going on with your world, you can't let your personal world affect your business world. And if you do, it's going to potentially negatively impact the way that other people feel about you. But if you set an intention right now about how you want other people to feel about you, you're going to put yourself in a much better situation. If you think to yourself, I want people to think about me as dependable and reliable and someone that's always upbeat, confident, and excited when it comes to work. It doesn't matter what's going on with your outside world. Even if the worst thing could have possibly happened in your outside personal world, if you set yourself an intention right now that that's how you want other people to feel about you, when you come into work, you're going to straighten yourself up because you've already identified, I don't want people to feel sad, bad, or like that I'm a charity case because I've got other things going on in my outside world. You want other people to feel like you are a rock, that you are someone that they can go to, that you are someone that's always showing up professionally. Boom. You will get yourself into the mindset ready to be successful. Now that leads to the 3 keys that we cover in every workshop for success in this mentor program, which is strategy, story, and state. And as I just said, it doesn't matter what's going on in your outside world. It doesn't matter what the state of the world is. If you are a rock, if you are someone that physically comes into a state conducive for being successful every single time, you will be successful. I promise you that. So what I want to do right now is I want to get you into a state conducive for being successful. I want you to stand up, and I want you to shake it loose. I want you to shimmy it out. I want you to let it go. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. On the count of 30, scream 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Just let it out. Let it loose. Let it go. You're getting yourself pumping. You're getting blood flowing to your brain. You're releasing endorphins. You're getting yourself ready to be successful. The reason why that is so key is because no matter what is going on in your world, you can drive your emotions with your motions. Your motions drive your emotions, meaning that if you get out, you move, you do a power pose, you get crazy, you can get yourself in a state conducive for other people wanting to be around you. You can get yourself feeling good, even if you don't want to feel good. Even if you think to yourself, I just want to remorse for a little bit. I just want to be sad for a little bit. You can be sad on your own time, but when it comes to work time, you step your game up. And the way that you step your game up is you get your emotions and you turn them into positive emotions. I can tell you that right now. Even when you don't want to feel on your best self, your emotions can get yourself into an emotional state conducive for being successful, even if it's only for a temporary period of time. I promise you, your emotions, getting moving, getting running, getting going, getting just shaken out, will get yourself successful. And that will be a huge catalyst for you being successful on the job, standing apart from other people. Because everyone else is going to wonder, like, man, how are you able to stay upbeat, positive, just like a go-to person every single time while other people are taking sick days or just having off days? And you can tell, everyone can tell. It's because you are making an intention to be that way before you come into work every single day. It's critical. Now, the next key is your story. What's the story you tell yourself? Now, that's a big point of the intentionality. What is the story you tell yourself for why you're going to be successful? If you tell yourself a negative story like, hey, you know what? I don't deserve to be here. I'm not qualified. I'm just honestly, I don't even know why I'm in the room. If that's a story you tell yourself, that is the outcome that will be perceived by other people. But if you tell yourself a story, man, I can do this, I can make an impact, I can learn from these people, I can engage, I can be the energetic person who does what it takes, works the hardest to get to where I need to be. If you come in with that mentality, you can be successful. Now, the last key is your strategy. What are you going to do to make sure that you set yourself apart from your peers? Now, there's a few things that we talk about with our guest speaker, but there's a few things that I would love to discuss with you right now. The first one is what is focal is causal. This is popularized by the work of Dr. Robert Cialdini. Essentially, what it means is that whatever is seen is perceived, which means that it is all optics. By that, I mean, if your supervisor, if your boss, if your CEO sees you showing up early for work, working hard on projects, taking initiative, they will attribute the success of the entire intern team to you. But if they see you on your phone, on social media, doing something lazy, just doing things that are not, like spreading gossip at the water cooler, not working when you should be working, anything that could be perceived as negative, if they see that, they will perceive that just as likely as they do the hardworking stuff. So it is really critical that whatever people see about you, whoever you want to make sure that you impress, that they see the type of person that you want to portray, and that they do not see the type of person you do not want to portray. You will think to yourself, man, I wonder how does XYZ person get promoted over another person? I can tell you how. It's that they are seen doing good work while the other people are not seen doing good work. Make sure that you're seen doing good work. In fact, what I always find the most interesting about this research of Dr. Robert Cialdini is its extrapolation to other areas of life, specifically as, you know, I don't know if any of you all are holed up right now for coronavirus and sitting inside watching television, but what they've observed, what he's observed in his research is that when cameras, especially in police interrogations, are facing any particular person, whether that be the police officer or the suspect, when the camera is facing the person, one particular person, a jury is much more likely to attribute negative feelings towards that person if the camera is facing them. So if the camera is facing a suspect in an interrogation, the jury is much more likely to attribute guilt on the party of the suspect than they are to think that the cop is asking leading questions, trying to get an answer that may not actually exist. However, flip it around. When the camera is facing the police officer, not the suspect, the likelihood that the jury is going to think that the cop, the police officer, is asking leading questions, trying to get an answer that may not actually be essentially the guilt of the person who's under interrogation, it essentially increases substantially more. The point I'm trying to make is that when what people see is what they perceive. So at the end of the day, if God forbid you're ever in a police interrogation situation and you notice that the camera is rolling, at the best you want to make sure that the camera is side by side equally to you both, or not facing you and facing the police officer. It's crazy how much of an impact that has on how people perceive other people. But more importantly, as it pertains to the workplace, make sure that people see you doing good work and not see you doing bad work. It's not a tit for tat type of thing. One bad deed is about 10 good deeds worth. You have to really, really make sure that you're not seen doing anything bad, or you are going to be on the shit list of your supervisor. And that's not a place you want to be. So the next thing that I want to talk about is this theory called the next in line theory. Essentially what this says is that when somebody is talking or about to speak, their likelihood of retaining any information before or after their speech is very low. So if you know that your supervisor is about to give a presentation, or someone that you really look up to, maybe you are about to see a keynote speaker, you're thinking to yourself, I love this keynote speaker, I love what he or she has to say, I want to go up to him or her after their speech. Bad idea. Here's why. People, when they speak, are much more likely to think about what they just said if they just finished giving a speech, or what they're about to say if they're about to give a speech. Their likelihood of retaining any new information is very minimal. So therefore, you need to give the person you're trying to make a positive impression to a leeway period before you bring up new information to them, because that will increase the likelihood that your message is actually going to resonate in their mind. But if you come up to them right before a speech or right after a speech that they just gave or are about to give, their likelihood of remembering what you said, very low. So just something to keep in mind. This also applies to a boss who's giving a speech, any colleague that's giving a speech, anybody who's about to speak publicly for anything. Make sure you don't talk to them immediately before or afterwards, because they're not going to remember what you said. So the last thing that I want to touch on is this concept called matching and mirroring. This is a great key for building rapport in the workplace, especially for someone who's got negative body language. So I think we've touched on this before in the past, but you should not have your arms crossed when you're at the workplace. It conveys that you're closed off and that you're not open to learning new information. But there's a lot of people that have bad body language in the workplace. There's going to be a lot of people that will cross their arms to you. Can you cross back? The answer is yes. And I know this might sound crazy, but people feel a subconscious connection to others that they are similar to. And this can be in your mannerisms and your speed of speech. Not your dialect of speech, but your speed of speech. So if somebody has a very thick Southern accent and you try to emulate that Southern accent, but you don't actually have a Southern accent, they're going to sniff that out immediately. It's going to be perceived as inauthentic. But if someone's talking really quickly and you're saying, I'm going to work on that, boss, I'm going to make sure I get that done, I'm going to work on it right away, they're going to think to themselves like, man, here's a sense of urgency, someone who's really with it. That's awesome. But instead, if you respond by saying, yeah, boss, I will get to it, and I will make sure that I get those assignments complete, they're going to be thinking to themselves, what the heck is wrong with this kid? Like, what does he not like get it? The sense of urgency? It's crazy how your speed of speech is actually perceived so similar together. So if you notice that someone talks really quickly or really slowly, following their speed of speech, matching and mirroring their speed of speech can actually help you build rapport with them. The other key is other body language. So like I said, crossing your arms. If someone's playing with their chin, you can play with your chin. Don't try to be overly obvious about it, but you can do it subtly. So if someone's playing with their ear, you can play with your ear. And I know it may sound crazy, but you can try this with a friend who's never heard this before. Go up to them, see if they've got any mannerisms. Maybe they're using their hands like this a lot. Emulate those hand gestures, and then all of a sudden introduce a new gesture. All of a sudden, maybe start playing with your nose. It could be any gesture, honestly. Start playing with your nose. Do it. First, emulate their hand gestures for about 5 minutes. Then introduce a new gesture. Watch what happens. They're going to start playing with their nose. They're going to start emulating the new gesture that you have now introduced. It's crazy. It's fascinating how it works, but it builds rapport between other people in the work environment. I think those are some really critical tips for you to know. The last thing that I want to leave you with is the 30 and 90-day rule. The 30-day rule is for an internship. When you first get into an internship, this is, by the way, this was, by the way, a Fortune 500 CEO taught me this tip. And that was, when you first go into an internship, meet with your supervisor and ask him or her the question, what did the best intern you ever have do to set themselves apart? On the very first day, ask that question. They're going to tell you exactly what they want you to do to set yourself apart. For the next 30 days, go ahead and do it. Don't complain. Don't ask questions. Don't share any professional goals you've got for yourself. Just go ahead, put your head down, work hard. After 30 days, you have built credibility with this person. You can then say, hey, boss, would you be open to having a conversation? I would love to share with you some of my professional goals. Boom. That's where you share some of your professional goals. That's where you say, hey, I'm interested in connecting with people in these areas or these types of fields or these types of industries. And because you've earned credibility, they will help you get there. Why? Because you've earned that credibility. But if on day one you ask for that and you've earned no credibility, they're not going to do it. Or if they do, they're going to only do it on a light version. You're not going to get the full force of how they could possibly help connect you. That is something that's really critical. 90-day rule is the exact same thing, but for a full-time job. You get a little bit longer to really build that credibility with your supervisor and your employer. So those are key tips. The last thing I want to just really mention is really starting to help you get into a routine. I know that the best way to learn anything is to actually teach it. So what I want you to do is I want you to find somebody. This could be a friend. It could be a peer. It could be a classmate. It could be anybody. Teach them something that you learned in this program. Teach them anything you learned in this program. We know that students who tell at least, we know that students who tell at least 20 people something that they learned in this program, that their likelihood of landing the job, the internship, getting to a graduate degree increases exponentially. We know that the more people a student tells, the more likely they're able to do that. What we've identified as 20 is that magic number. And this doesn't necessarily have to be you teaching them a full seminar of anything we taught. It could be literally you bringing up casually in conversation, like, hey, I learned about this thing called matching and mirroring. It's really fascinating. Boom, that's it. That's one person. Or multiple people if you're in a group. But what we've learned is that the more people you tell, the more likely you are actually going to retain this information, the more likely you are going to actually apply it into your professional life, and the more likely you are actually to achieve the goals you have set for yourself professionally. It's crazy how it works. It's a network effect. It really does make an impact. So I want to challenge you that after this workshop, you go out, you identify a friend, you teach them something you learned in this program, and its likelihood of sticking increases exponentially. I really want to challenge you to do that. This is our final workshop. I'm really excited for what you are able to accomplish over the summer. I would really encourage you to be in the program next semester. You're going to get a new mentor. We're going to have new speakers. We're going to talk about new content. I think you're going to really enjoy it and really springboard your career into another level. I think you're going to really enjoy that. Thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful rest of this workshop. I look forward to seeing you on the next part. Hey everybody, welcome to our workshop this evening. I'm so excited to dive into our topic. Our topic is how to make the most out of that first job or internship. So we're entering into the summer. We are potentially, hopefully having our first internship or job lined up. If you don't, that's okay. But if you're in a scenario where you do have that first job or internship lined up, you've got an idea of what you want to do over the summer, that's fantastic. This workshop is all about how do we go about making the most of it? Because here's the thing, you can do a lot of things. You could go into this job and you could do all the things that you're told to do, and then you could come home, or you could go to that internship, you could follow the instructions order by order. But you might feel like there might be something missing, and you might not be fully taking advantage of everything that could be in existence of those opportunities, because sometimes people aren't going to go to you and say, hey, you need to do this, 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 and this on a step-by-step process. But there are things that if you did do them, it could substantially enhance your experience as an intern or in your first job out of school.
So we've got a great guest with us here this evening to help us talk about this topic. We've got Joey Boyer. Joey is the founder of Legendary Affinity, where he is on an eternal mission to build a pivotal ecosystem where everyone is empowered to act out of their strengths and passions. His purpose is to bring people together to create the three affinities: one, an affinity for our work; and two, an affinity for each other; and three, an affinity with his customers. Everyone who comes in contact with his products or services will feel the fire and electricity that comes off such a strong bond of affinities. Joey, thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Wow, what a nice intro. Good to hear the legendary stuff coming out.
Yeah, of course, of course. Well, hey, so Joy, I would love if you could maybe just share with us a little bit of your story. I know that you're an entrepreneur. You started your own business, very similarly to me, like right out of college. But I would imagine there was a lot of things that you learned from building your business earlier on, from your early professional career, collegiate career. And then just as you built those experiences, what were some of the, I guess, what was your path like, one? And two, what were some of those experiences that were really critical and foundational to you becoming the entrepreneur you are today?
Mm. There's a lot that happened, and as I'm sure you also kind of encountered on your experience, is you start to realize there are more and more connections that happen more in the past. Like you realize that, oh, this was actually something that drove me here, and this actually happened all the way back in college. So for me, I wasn't the best at school. I still tried my hardest, but even then, wasn't the greatest. But I did enjoy presentations. I enjoyed anything where I could work with a team, and so that's where I really started learning that, hey, I really like working with the team. Originally, I was going to do engineering, then I looked at architecture, but I always had a passion for business since I was a kid. So I went down the business management with emphasis on entrepreneurship, et cetera. So yeah, that was fun. And then I went straight from there into corporate, and my dad went up the corporate ladder, and I always wanted to kind of follow in his footsteps. And then I figured, okay, I'll do that until I know what I want to do for a business. And then I'll end up going, that route. So things are a little different for me. So I was very fortunate, got a solid job pretty much right after I graduated. It just kind of fell into my lap through LinkedIn. So I recommend to everybody get a LinkedIn and start using it early on, because it will help you. So that's where I was found for all of my jobs. And anyway, so I got that one, and I was just kind of bent enough from different angles on realizing what I did and didn't like, and then seeing other people frustrated as well, and realized that I started having this kind of calling start to be presented to me. And then that's actually after that first job, I didn't work there for more than even half a year, and I realized I wanted to start my own thing.
Wow, that's cool. And so you started your own business, and what were the early days like? What was the original business model for Legendary Affinity? How did that evolve over time? Yeah, I'd love to start with that.
Oh man, the original business model wasn't so much. I wouldn't say it was as much there. I would say we really had the vision and mission, but what we were really doing was a little bit more loosely put together, which I think is kind of the case where a lot of businesses start. However, I would always recommend to any business, start with your why and your vision and your mission first, because that's what's kept us here and true, and why we still exist. Originally, we started going down the gaming route, and we were creating a game, and we launched that actually in I think it was early last year. The 2020 and 2021 kind of blended a little bit for me, but yeah, we did launch it, and now we've moved to another one of our realms, as we call them, our subsidiaries, which is a marketing company, and that's the one right now that we're focusing on, in addition to the gaming company and the kind of next level generation game that we're working on there.
That's cool. So you have this mission, you got this vision, you're thinking to yourself, okay, I wanna create this impact on the world. Um, what kind of experiences, like when you were in that first job right out of college, like did it just something like come over you? Like what made you decide, okay, I want to start this business, I'm going to go ahead and do that? Like what experiences did you have while in this job that almost kind of made you feel the way that you felt?
I felt a misalignment with my abilities. I wanted to do more. I was a very creative, I am a very creative person. And so I didn't get to have that outlet like I wanted to. But the thing is, I would also, these are things I would still be, I would suggest people to be careful with, because even my mentality then, I would not necessarily suggest you have that same mentality I had back then. I would look at it still differently, right? Like I have 4 things I would recommend somebody if they are going into a job or an internship, what they should be looking for. But for me, in my case, it wasn't, I just knew in my heart that this was not what I was supposed to do.
What are those 4 things? I love
I would, yeah. So I would say, humble yourself. That's the first one. Humble yourself. Get comfortable with the journey mentality. Be intentional and observant. And then the 4th one I would say is make good connections and focus on value. And I can go into each of those. They're quick if you want, but those are kind of the things in my reflection that I've learned.
Yeah, I love, if you could dive into that.
Yeah, so humbling yourself. This is huge, and it's something that we don't. I don't think we capitalize enough on this superpower. And you might think you're a big shot for a lot of reasons coming out of college. You might think either you're like, I graduated 4.0, or, like I got all this, I have 4 majors, or maybe you didn't do so great at school and you knew that like, oh, when I get out, I'm going to crush it. And that was a little bit more my mentality, which is okay. Like, that's okay. You might be a big shot, but don't go into things thinking you're a big shot. Humble yourself first, because to receive what you really want to receive and move down the path that you desire will require you to have humility. It will require you to kind of, it's way different in this world, in the realm of education. And so humble yourself is a big one. It'll allow you to learn more, it'll allow you to observe more, and people will be more receptive to you. So that's the first one. The second one was,
hold on a second. I want to dive into that. So
sure.
I think I love that. Now that I understand what you're saying, humble yourself is more like adopt a learning mentality. Adopt a willingness to ask the stupid questions, the willingness to ask any questions at all, for that matter. I think that's something that a lot of students struggle with. They think to themselves like, okay, I don't want to be the stupid person in the room. I don't want to make a mistake, so I'm not going to ask any questions. And in reality, from what I've observed is, if I'm hearing what you're saying right, you are doing yourself a disservice, and you're potentially setting yourself up to look like an actual idiot because you never asked questions at the very beginning about what was going on. I think I saw like a Simon Sinek video where he was in the boardroom of this company or whatever, and these consultants who had been working with this company for months are now presenting their findings, and they're using these acronyms and these things. And Simon's like, hey, sorry, I know I'm the silly person in the room. What does this mean? And what does that mean? What does this acronym mean? And everybody else in the boardroom had not ever made a comment. These presenters are getting exasperated and frustrated. But by the end of it, everybody else in the room was like, man, I had no idea what any of those things meant. I just kept nodding my head yes, because it seemed like everybody else was nodding their head.
Right. Yeah.
But it's like, shoot, had they not had someone to ask the stupid questions, they would have wasted so much money on these consultants because they had no idea what was actually going on. Point is this, that as a student, you've got these opportunities with your job or your internship to ask the questions, to be a sponge for all this knowledge. And shoot, if you come in with this, I don't want to look stupid mentality, you will be doing your own self a disservice, wasting your own resources, your time, because you're not taking full advantage of it.
Right. And in addition to that, I mean, you nailed it. Don't be afraid to be that person. But in addition to that, also, if you can have that is, like you said, student mentality. But in addition to that, if you can be comfortable with doing something that might seem like a task that's beneath you. Does that make sense? Like, if someone wants you to do some silly, if you think you're too good for like some Excel data entry thing, try to get yourself out of that mindset and learn and experience what you've been given, what's been put in front of you, and then take note. If it's draining you, if it's frustrating, whatever it is, take note and discover why. Figure out why is it that bothers me, and then what is it? What are the specific components? Because that's going to help you down in like your path further down, so that you can have that fulfillment in what it is that you want to do, and you'll be learning. So that's what I recommend. I didn't do the best job at that when I was younger, but that's something that we even seek when we're getting interns too.
Totally. Yeah, I love that. I think it's like being an entrepreneur is a very interesting thing, because it's like there are reasons why you get into this in the very first place. There are things that you probably enjoy doing. There are things you probably didn't enjoy doing. You're thinking to yourself like, oh, I'm going to, now that I'm the boss, I'm going to eradicate a lot of these things that I don't want to do. And it's like, nope, you are more likely than not going to be the person who has to do it, or you're going to have to create the work to be enjoyable, because the work has to get done. Someone has to do it.
Yes. Yeah, you'll be back full circle, but you'll have the knowledge, and you'll also be motivated because this will be for something you believe in, or for hopefully for a company you believe in. If you're not like entrepreneurial, like that's not your path, that's fine too. No bad thing there. But then the natural segue to that would be the second point, and that's the journey mentality, right? Don't go into your first job or your first internship thinking, okay, I'm out of college, I know I was gonna get a job, and like this is the one, like this is the job, like I'm changing, like I'm new to this. And it's like it's part of your path. Like know that it's not the end. So don't freak out if it's not great at first. Give it some time. And also, again, be open to traveling down. It's all part of your path. And that was something that I think I felt a little bit too much of. And I think some of my peers and colleagues felt the same way. Like this isn't your last, this isn't your first or your last. Like this is the beginning of your career, the beginning of your journey. Even for me, you know, however, I don't know, almost 6 years in, like that's not even that long. We're like 5 minutes into the movie, right? Like keep going.
Yeah. It's almost like the power of setting an intention, and an intention of being interested in learning and growing and being open to whatever the world comes our way. And I know that sounds potentially hippy dippy to these students watching this right now, but I really think there's a lot of power in that mentality, because if we come into our work or our professional careers with this expectation of what we think it's going to be like, and that it's a bust if it's nothing but that, we are totally selling short the power of the skills and the things that we're going to be able to learn on the way of getting to where we're going. It's like there's no growth without discomfort.
Yes, thank you for saying that. That is so important. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable. And I think partially comes from the humility side of things. So that's a good one. And yeah, sure, it might seem hippy dippy, but look, at the end of the day, it does come down to who you are as a person and the way you accept and see the world around you, because the other people, the other things are not going to change. And like Garrett, what you said about being intentional, that was the third piece that I was going to give, is like the intentionality. If you can have the intentionality to bring excellence in everything you do, people will see that, and they will see it, they'll see you, and you will be remembered by your actions, and also become aware, like the things that you're doing, again, become aware of what you're enjoying and what you're not, and listen to those indicators and take note of them, because they're going to guide you through your career path.
And also, you're going to live a happier life. Like at the end of the day, like, what are we on this earth for? What are we trying to do here? We're pursuing our career. It's like we're trading time for dollars. Like, dollars are a resource. It's fuel. It's an engine that can allow us to live potentially whatever life we want to live, for that matter. Yep. We choose what we want to do with our fuel, that being our dollars. Is this giving us emotional returns for our investment? Is this giving us happiness? And part of that is our perspective going into it. If we come in with thinking like, hey, we're going to learn, hey, I'm going to be open to whatever path is going to take me. I'm not going to have these expectations. Doesn't mean you don't set goals. It just means that if we're open to learning if things go differently than what we expect. And then if we set this intention as to, okay, I'm going to show up this way every single, by the way, I'd be curious, do you have any tips for just intentionality of like how to be present or just be intentional for whatever you're doing?
I mean, yeah, I feel like that's like a whole separate thing, but yeah, I mean, there are a lot of practices that you can yourself do, but I think those come down to your own style of intentionality. And I think it starts a lot with what does that mean for you to be intentional? I mean, we can dive deeper into those. What are you thinking as far as like a practice?
Just even like high level tips. Like here's one that I use, and this, by the way, may not be a popular one. You can choose to use this or not use this, but my phone is perpetually on silent, face down. You cannot call me, and it is very difficult to reach me. And I do that on purpose. And I know that sounds crazy, But at the end of the day, what I realize is that when I'm with somebody else, I'm 100% with them. Like there are no distractions. My phone will never ring. It will never go off. You'll never hear a buzz, beep, click, clack, or anything. I will never check my phone when I'm with somebody else. And for anybody that's trying to reach me, like my fiance, she gets pissed. She's like, what if I'm trying to reach you? What if there's an emergency? What if this is happening? What's that happen? It's like, I get it, but the trade-off for that is that I'm 100% present when I'm there. And I don't know, that makes me very intentional about the people I'm with. So like, that was something that I made an intentional decision of, never have my phone on sound or vibrate. Like I can get no notifications. And then if I get a free moment to check my phone, I'll check my phone and I'll catch up on all of it later at whatever later date that I look at. But that's like a trick that I've used to help me be really intentional with my time.
That's really cool. I like that. I do this silent mode stuff anytime I'm on a call, turn, the computer, because I have a MacBook, so I get like a billion notifications from every possible communication platform we use. So I always put that on silence. That's one way. But I would say, as far as being present, I think it really is a long-term practice, and you're going to get better at it if you decide to apply that practice daily. I have my own little rituals I do twice a day at least. And that can be, it can be going for a run, it can be legitimate meditation, it can be yoga, it can be just sitting looking outside at something for a little while. But at the end of the day, I just always come back to why it is that you want to do things. And you talked about money being a renewable resource, and or more or less, that's, you kind of touched on it, but money being the fuel, if you will. And that's important because you also need to consider your opportunity costs. It's something people don't always think about. They think, oh, well, I want to make 20,000 more a year. Okay, well, that means you have to work, 40 extra hours a week. You want to work an 80-hour work week or a 40-hour work week? Like, which one is, what do you want to be doing, right? And if it's like, okay, yeah, actually trading in $20,000 so I can just have a little bit more time and be with my family and I can live off whatever is.
And it also depends on what work gives to you and how it makes you feel. Like, do you feel like you're learning when you're doing your work, or do you feel like it's draining? Is your work giving you energy, or is it taking energy away? And if it's taking any energy away, any additional time that you spend on work is making your life and overall happiness worse. But if your work is giving you something, even if it's uncomfortable, but it's giving you knowledge and something that you value, and you're like, man, this is really interesting stuff. I feel like I'm learning constantly, but gosh, I am putting a lot of hours in or whatever. It's taking away from other ways that I could spend my time, but I'm appreciating the way that I am. If you could find some semblance of appreciation, that is going to make your life a lot better. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're an entrepreneur. Like, you don't necessarily, I mean, obviously Joey and I are entrepreneurs, but you don't necessarily have to run or own your own business to feel that level of fulfillment. You can feel a level of learning something all the time. But it almost starts with the mentality, that intentionality of like, I am going to learn something today. If you come in expecting that your job is going to suck, your job is going to suck. No matter if you are curing cancer or making engine parts or whatever you're doing, like, your mentality about it is going to say a lot about you. And very likely that mentality is going to affect any job that you work in.
Exactly. And that's why I wanted to focus on just at least those 4 pieces. There's so many other mentality components, but the humility, the journey mentality and not destination, and being intentional and observant, and then making good connections, right? And focusing on value. Good connections in your workplace is going to help you a lot in your career too. That's from everybody, from your boss to your clients, customers, everybody, every single person with whom you come in contact could change your life, and hopefully you theirs as well. But I mean, that could be in the next day, it could be tomorrow, they help you with something, or it could be in 10 years where they remember, oh yeah, there was this one guy I worked with and he was really cool. He did this and that, or she did this. And, let me call him and see, because now I'm the CEO and I want to bring them on to be another C-level executive. So there's value there.
Yeah. I love to take a moment to ask the students a question real quick. Could you share with us in the chat section, what is your intention focus? I love to learn about it. Like, if you could set an intentionality for this first job or internship that you're about to head into over the summer, what is that intention? Put it in the comment section. I love to learn. Is it, it could be literally anything. I just would love if I could learn what your intention statement is. I think it would be really cool, because then it obviously requires you to create an intention statement for what you want to accomplish over the summer. So I think that's something I love to learn about. So Joey, we talked about connections here. Why is making those connections powerful? I think we've had workshops earlier this semester about, how to network in a genuine way and how to get our foot in the door for opportunities and how to prepare for the interview. But now you bring up this idea of making connections. And you even brought up the example of like sometimes people that you interact with at one point in time can re-engage in future lives. But do you mind elaborating on the power of making those connections and why they're relevant and beneficial, even if you don't see a necessarily transactional outcome at this moment in time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are many angles that you could look at this from. You could look at it from just an interpersonal perspective and how important it is for just as a human for you to have a community and social connection, which I feel like we lose more with every year. I mean, we have a lot more virtual stuff going on. We're just a little bit more disconnected. So there's definitely a lot of value in you being intentional and investing your time into your colleagues, into your boss, into those individuals. But in addition to that, from an actual professional perspective, that's going to help you just so much. Even if you know someone who knows someone, you can reach out. You have, like, it really is true about who you know is a very powerful thing. Let's say even like it's in a different department, you should make friends if you can in a different department. You might find that you like that department more and you might be able to move there quickly, or you might be able to ask a favor if from a very light perspective, like if there's an IT person, you're like, yo, dude, my computer's crashed, and you might get to the front of the line if you want to look at it that way. But there are a lot of just benefits that are more long-term and holistic. But yeah, it can definitely accelerate things. And yeah, again, you never know where each of you might be.
And not to like channel my inner Maya Angelou, but it's not about what you said, but it's how you made them feel. If you're a
Exactly.
genuinely kind person, people are going to remember that you're a kind person. They're going to want to be around you. If you're a jerk, or yeah, I mean, I think here's one thing that you brought up earlier that I just thought was so powerful. You had mentioned like, hey, maybe I didn't do the best in school. I didn't get the best of grades in the world, but I was really great at working on teams. And that's just because you're just a really genuinely nice and kind person, Joey. And you are really collaborative. You want to include people. You want to hear their perspectives, and you're really good at leading people. And that's, I feel like a trait in school that you can't really test for, but gosh, it's so powerful. If you can harness that in the real world, can be so pivotal to you being successful in your career. Because in school, like technically you could not go to class. You could show up only for exam time, complete your exam, never talk to anybody and get all A's. Technically, yes, but that's not how the real world works. Your ability to collaborate, your ability to communicate, your ability to just make people feel like, that you're present and intentionally focused about what you have to say to them and that you're using their time wisely. I mean, that makes people feel really good. And there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, I love it. And don't ever forget, like, just try it. Like, don't, there's nothing to lose. And honestly, the earlier on, the sooner you get to practice, you will making these relationships, because usually the individuals you'll have the closest interaction with will be those who are about the same age as you, usually, not always. And if they're not, usually they're understanding because they have greater wisdom. It's always a value to jump right in, because I'm saying that because I know there are individuals who are a little bit intimidated, and that's okay to be intimidated. It's okay to be shy. Not everybody is this outgoing person who wants to like just grab this person, take them to lunch. Like, not everyone's like that, and that's okay. But definitely starting somewhere and being intentional with your interactions is going to help you a lot, just as a person, but also professionally. And your actions, like Garrett said, like your actions speak louder than anything you do. People might forget your name, but they will remember the way you made them feel and what you did. Like, one thing I used to do, and it frustrated the heck out of some individuals when I did this. But when I was done with my work, I would stand up and I would ask everybody if I could help them with anything that they were working on. Because if I was done, I could not stop working. This drove people crazy when I was working in, like, I worked at Jamba Juice for my first job when I was in junior high. And I was always working, and it frustrated people. It's like, can't you stop? Like, there's no one here. I'm like, well, I'm gonna go clean the bathroom, I'm gonna clean the windows. And I always had to work. I loved working. I like being, so it comes back to intentionality. So if you show that spirit that you want to help people and that you are a team, going out of your way, even with that, and even do it, even if you hit resistance of people who might be haters, like, it's just keep going.
Yeah, no, that's a really good reinforcement. And actually, it's a topic that I want to talk a little bit about, because I mean, from an entrepreneurial perspective, this is a very unique perspective. But what advice do you have for students that are afraid? Rather, maybe first question, I love to ask the students a question first. When it comes to your job, when it comes to your career, when it comes to your internships, like what is your biggest fear? Like what is your biggest fear about anything, like failure? What is your biggest fear as it pertains to interactions? Like when it comes to this job or internship, like what is your biggest fear? I'm a big fan of like putting fears out into the world, because by doing so, we can actually recognize how much BS they actually are. And
Yes.
so I love for the students watching this right now, post your biggest fear when it comes to your first for this job or internship, the thing that you're doing over the summer. What is your biggest fear? Post in the comment section. I love to learn about it. But Joy, your perspective, how do you, like, what advice do you have for students that have a fear of failure?
Ooh, man. It's a tough one. I mean, honestly, I really wish, can we just like all agree just to eradicate that word? It's not necessary. It really isn't. I know you go to school and you either pass or you fail, but I would love to see that word when people get out. Honestly, I'd love to see that word just go away, because there isn't a failure. There really isn't a failure. And I challenge you, if you can, you being the student, the listener, I challenge you to remove that word from your mind, because it's not real in this world. If you're moving from education, if you're moving from being in college or wherever into the real world, remove it. You don't need it. There is no failure. I will say
Failure
the
also
one.
implies expectation. Back to the whole point that we said about being intentional and eradicating those expectations and just ultimately being open to the journey. Like failure implies that there was some level of expectation going into certain thing and we didn't get it. And that makes us frustrated. Whereas we did get something else. We probably got some knowledge. We probably got some bumps and bruises. We probably got some scratches here and there. And those scratches, bumps, and bruises and knowledge makes us stronger for future opportunities.
Exactly, man. Exactly. Yeah. I would say preach on that, because the only thing that you should fear is becoming stagnant or complacent, because people will be like, well, didn't that business fail? Yo, dude, that's because they got complacent and they gave up. There are a lot of things you could probably look at that I've done and be like, that was a failure. No, it wasn't. We learned so much. Every one of those pennies, they built the team that we have today. They built the unity and the strength. They filtered out the people who didn't have what it takes, and it made the people rise to the top who do have what it takes. So I don't think that I think your only fear, if I were to call it a fear, is don't become stagnant, don't become complacent in anything. And if you find yourself at a crossroads where you're like, oh, I'm not sure, because this is another thing that really startles people, especially in their career, it's like, I don't know which avenue to take. Like, is there a right? Is there wrong? There's so many things, and people are telling me this and people are telling me that. Like, listen, like seriously, there's no wrong path. And remember that the majority of the paths you can just turn back around after you gather some data. If you're like, oh, but I'm young or I'm old or whatever. No, dude, like go down your path. All those paths, right or wrong, they will lead you to your path. The wrong path is you standing still and digging a hole down into the earth. Everything else is going to serve you. I know that from personal experience, from all the paths that felt and might have been wrong in hindsight, but they all led me to have what I need to be able to be happy and to be able to succeed at what I'm doing now.
Well, and not only that, it just shows that you're practicing gratitude for like anything. I love to ask the students, post in the comment section, what are you grateful for? As it pertains to your career path, your life path, their path up to this point in time, what are you grateful for? Post 3 things that you're grateful for. Just a fun little gratitude exercise. I'd love to learn about what our students are grateful for, because that gratitude for the knowledge is so powerful. And it's like that, even like I even think about, because I love learning about entrepreneurial stories. It makes me think of like Odeo. Do you remember Odeo?
Odeo, no.
So Odeo, essentially these guys, Evan Williams, Biz Stone, and Jack Dorsey built out blogger.com, sold it, I think, to Yahoo or something like that. And they're like, oh, let's do like blogger.com, but for vocal words, and have essentially people downloading these free form pre-recorded forms of audio clips of talking and educating people on different topics, just like a blog would. And then like they got all this funding for it. And I want to say like a year later, Apple comes out with this new thing called podcasts. And they were like, God damn it. Are you kidding me right now? And so they go back to the drawing board. They did this hackathon, and they very well could have said, oh, we're a failure. We're going to shut it down. We're done. And yeah, Jack Dorsey, Bistone came together and said, hey, let's go back to our roots of this blogger.com, but as opposed to doing blogs, let's do this short form, like content, limited number of characters. People can post and comment on it. And like, maybe you don't necessarily have a profile as much where people can do like as much direct messaging, more about like what you're putting out there. And that ended up becoming Twitter.
Yep. Hashtag Twitter.
Hashtag Twitter. I mean, not necessarily saying I'm the biggest fan of Twitter, but the power is in taking a thing that some might have called a just fatal blow and turning it into something is cool.
Keep moving, right? Keep taking action. That's the biggest thing. I love how you also brought up gratitude, because that will change your life. I can sense that you have a gratitude practice in your life. So that's really cool. I would suggest it to everybody. And I would suggest it when you wake up, and I would suggest it before you go to sleep, and make it one of the first and last things, because you have a lot to be grateful for. And when you are displaying gratitude, whether that's in a prayer or just speaking out loudly or to yourself or to whatever you feel you want to express gratitude, or if it's a journal it. Just take 5 minutes. And if you do that, you're kind of forcing yourself to be in the present, because you have to be in the present to be gratitude, and you're producing joy. And don't ever forget the power of that.
Totally. I mean, every student in this program has a mentor, is in a honor society, fraternity, sorority, university that like supports them getting mentorships. They're pursuing these career paths that are incredible. I mean, there's so many freaking things that are awesome going on in your life and in your world. And that's awesome. That's something to totally be grateful for. So anyways, Joy, I love to ask you some final questions. Any final tips for students as they pursue their career path?
Man, just follow what follow what we've been talking about on, like, all the stuff, even though it might seem like Garrett said, hippie, whatever, it is going to be the core of everything of who you are. If you can also figure out like your why, even if it's not perfect, because it will always change, and use it as your North Star. And don't be afraid to adventure down the different paths with people, careers, everything. Feel free to adventure. There's no failure in this space. Go have fun. And that's also the point. Have fun living your life. Have fun trying to do things. You can do that with a smile on your face and have that gratitude. You're going to be having an amazing life, and you will find fulfillment.
Love that. Very cool. Joy, you brought this up earlier. LinkedIn. How can our students connect with you? Are you okay with them connecting with you on LinkedIn?
Sure. Just make sure that you're intentional. Drop a message and tell me like why you're messaging and where you're coming from, because I get a lot of LinkedIn stuff that I usually just ignore. So I want to make sure I can listen to you. So yeah, absolutely reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Very cool. Joy, thank you for being here. Students, thank you all for being here this semester. I'm so excited to learn how your summer goes. I hope to have you in our program next semester. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. See you, everybody.